You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Welcome to Modern Musicology. How's everybody doing? My name is Alan, and we've got two of our co-hosts here, Stephanie Seymour.
Hello, people.
And Rob Levy.
Hey, kids.
And this week we are joined by two amazing special guests. We are joined by the band Sleepy Kitty. Their new album, Blessing Curse, came out this past June, so it's just a couple of months old. So we are joined today by Evan Sult and Paige Brubeck. How are you two doing?
We're doing great. Thanks for having us here.
Thanks for having us. Doing great.
It's so great to have you join us. And we're really looking forward to talking with you. And we've been studying the music and we're loving it. So
We are.
Yeah, the new album is just great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I want to start out just really quickly. I just want to say, when people think of a band, they usually think of a band. You write songs, you go on tour, you record albums, but Sleepy Kitty is more than just a band. It's kind of like part of a multimedia philosophy. It's like a very holistic approach to art. So can you talk a little bit about your artistic mindset and how the band music plays a part in that?
Wow. I think for Evan and I, when we first started, first dating and then bonding over music and art, and then pretty soon after that started making music and art together, it kind of was harder to stay out of each other's business than to directly get involved. And I think both of us have like to collaborate with other people, and but also like to throw ourselves into projects. And early on in our relationship, it was just like we started doing more and more projects together, both visual arts with helping each other design posters for our bands at that time, and then starting to play music just for fun together, and then starting to make posters for that band, which is Sleepy Kitty, together. And really, it's kind of hard not to collaborate. It's just been organic for many years now.
We met in Chicago, each in separate bands, and then I'd been doing the screen printed poster designs for my band, Bound Stems, there. And Paige, I knew she'd been doing some screen printing, and I walked in one day as she and her bandmate were screen printing on the floor of her apartment in this extremely unorthodox, to me, very shocking approach, just kind of scrubbing at the screen with the ink. But that was really cool. And very soon after, we just started collaborating on everything there. And then as we got tighter and tighter together, we moved to St. Louis and found a space there that we've come to call the Art Castle, which was just a big old space where we could make whatever we wanted in whatever form. We had loading dock and tall ceilings and big doors and multiple floors, and it was a big old place. We could make as big a mess as we wanted, be as loud as we wanted, and really from there it was just kind of a delicious fall into doing whatever we wanted to do together. And we decided it wasn't going to be really very fair to be a two-piece, like a couple within a larger band structure that just kind of seems like you have a voting block that can't. So we just decided to keep it two-piece. That also let us practice whenever we wanted, however we wanted. And between the different disciplines we've been working on, it's just kept us busy ever since. Still cramming it in.
Yeah.
So you still
Yeah,
do
and
the
I
screen printing, right? I mean, I seen the cool video for Don't You Start, which was, I guess, 2014, where you show the
Mhm.
process of the screen printing and the result in the video. But I suppose you're still doing that. Yeah.
I would say technically yes, although in practice not as frequently as we were at that time. The Don't You Start video was probably the most where we were the most immersed in screen printing as well.
Mhm.
But after the pandemic really slowed down live shows, obviously, as we all know, it really changed screen printing for us as well, because a lot of our favorite thing to do was always band posters and posters for plays and such, and event-based design. And I like doing art prints as well, but I think Evan and I really are into the poster aspect of things.
Yeah.
And so yeah, the at the beginning of the pandemic, we were doing a project for a client, or right before, and then we ended up adapting the design to print a different date on, because he's like, it'll be in 2 months now. And then we 2 months later, it was like, actually it looks like it's going to be 2 more months, and then we ended up adapting it and printing another layer over it again to just say like release, because it was like no one knew when this guy was going to have his album release anymore, but we had made the poster. But yeah, I like posters for us have not been as present as they were pre-pandemic, unfortunately, but we love doing screening still and are kind of always interested in doing more.
We did the design for this album cover.
Yeah.
I will say, I also think that, as far as I can tell, screen printed posters themselves have kind of receded as a way of communicating. I think they were already kind of there was kind of a beautiful bloom of posters associated with rockos and stuff. I come from Seattle, and there was just a fantastic scene there. Chicago, one of the best scenes in the world for screen printed posters. But then over the last 5 years or so, certainly aided by the pandemic, there just aren't as many.
Yeah, they were plastered all over New York for so long. But then, I mean, really, I'm going far back now, but as far back as like Giuliani, when he was just like, I mean, it's a little side note. I got arrested for postering for my band because in that Giuliani era, because he was just like cracking down on that. So it was my first and only arrest.
Legit.
Oh, wow, that's it.
Steph,
we got we walked out once to go wheat paste, which we don't normally wheat paste. But we, for whatever reason, we were like, we're going to wheat paste. And literally, this was in Chicago. We went under the train, kind of pulled out a poster.
We were still on our block.
Held it up against the stanchion, and a light hit us, and it was a cop. And he was like, "What are you doing?"
Oh, wow.
We're like, "Oh, man." And we thought, that's it. We're going to get busted. And he was like, "I'm not saying," it's like, just be cool.
It's like, I think we were so pathetic at it that he was like, these guys,
wow.
I don't even know what to do with them.
So,
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well,
but we did. I mean, postering around town is one of the cool things about making music, is all the different ways that you connect with people. And one of the things that I've always loved, and it sounds like you as well, Stephanie, is like you go around and you put stuff up, and real things up in real places, and real people see them walking by.
Yeah.
And that process turns out to be, I think, one of the valuable things. It's kind of like there's playing music, and then there's also writing music, but there's also like writing about music and how that kind of engages things, which I've always been a part of my music life too. It really is a multimedia endeavor, not just to get the word out about a band, but because like all of these things are band life. And hip hop has very much got that thing. It's not just the rap, it's also the scratching, and it's also the dancing, and they have the 4 pillars and stuff, and nobody ever talks about that in rock and roll, but I mean, I think since Bill Graham Presents, posters have been a part of the lifeline and going out and putting those out or handing them out or whatever. And it's in a way, that's all part of the show,
Right. Well, since you mentioned producing the album cover for the new album, Blessing and a Curse, which is a gorgeous cover, by the way. I absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the new album. It kind of had a long process of getting from the songwriting stage to getting out into the world. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I do want to say to start, it's technically Blessing Curse. So
I was quoting from the lyric.
Oh, yeah.
There.
I wasn't sure if you
it's
actually said it like blessing / curse or like it's said in the lyric, or so thank you for correcting me.
Yeah. I guess it could be pronounced, or it could be said a lot of ways. Yeah, we call it blessing curse.
Okay.
Yeah, it did take a while, didn't it? It was for us, well, God, a lot happened. Besides the pandemic, it's easy to forget. It's easy to forget now how many kind of life events happened during this album for us. But we started writing it basically right after. I mean, well, I guess we did a few other things in between. We did a theatrical play where we did music for that, and we released an EP after a couple EPs after Projection Room, and we kind of started writing these things when we were on the road, when we were working on Flux, the EP that came out after Projection Room in 2016, and then we were kind of writing these songs while we worked on other things, and we started
touring a lot
and touring a lot, and I think at that time we were just really in the touring mindset and keep really busy, and kind of like, I mean, I can literally say I pushed myself to the limit at that time, because we ran into a situation where I was getting hoarse all the time, and I was having sore throat, and it was just taking longer to come back. Like, it was getting a sore throat easier than usual, and it was taking me longer than usual to recover. And it was kind of a year of trying to figure out what was even going on before I realized, or before, they found, my doctors found that I had a vocal polyp that was to need surgery if I wanted to be able to do the things that I wanted to be able to do vocally. So that was a very strange time, because like some of the very first songs were recorded before that surgery and before I even had a problem. And then some were recorded kind of like in that finding out there was a problem time. Mm-hmm. And then some were right after. And so it was a very challenging time, and it just took a long time to kind of like just to get my stamina back, and not be kind of afraid of pushing it too far. And it was amazing at that time.
I was gonna ask you about that, Paige. Yeah, because I know that it takes. So I mean, I have a similar situation with like a partially paralyzed vocal cord, and it just I wondered to. I believe that it probably had the same effect, that it's very mentally challenging. Like I mean, obviously it's physically challenging,
Absolutely.
But you lose your confidence, don't you? I mean, it's a sort of a blow in that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for me, I don't know how other people experience it and how you experience it. For me, like, just the mental part was like a lot of it, and just kind of worrying about hurting myself. And I think I was just, overthinking a lot of things, because it's like, oh, well, is it this that did it? Is it this? And then trying to be over careful. But then, there's some of my doctors were saying like, well, it could have been anything, like it could be like, yes, months and months or years and years, of like just singing rock music, or like you could have had a really cough, and people get polyps like after they have strep throat or something too. So it was a little frustrating to be like, well, what was it? I wanted to, we'll never do that ever again. but that's not how that works. And I think for me, the weirdest part, and I don't know how other people experience their kind of like inner voice and their physical voice, but and I don't know really how it works, but I was having a harder time even writing in the normal way I would write. Like if I have a sore throat, I kind of like it's like hard to even practice guitar on some of those songs, as weird as that sounds. But it's like like I can kind of wake up and know like yeah, I can't reach that today. And like I think so it was kind of a strange place for writing because I kind of have some idea, kind of know I couldn't reach those at that moment. And yeah, and then mentally it's just like very that can drive a body crazy.
Yeah, it can be very stressful. Yeah. Well, but you persevered obviously, and you got well, and then of course then the pandemic hit, right? So then you were even delayed more with the album.
Well, it's funny. I think the reason that album ended up being called, we already had the song "Blessing Curse," but I think the reason the album took that name was because we were experiencing life in that strange way of like, the vocal polyp could feel like a curse, but it makes you really aware of the blessings that we've had so far, and like, and getting through it, getting to the other side is a real blessing, but you're really aware of the curse that we get through to get there. And the pandemic was kind of the same thing. Like it was scary as hell for everybody, you know. We just by chance, we had moved to New York in 2019. We've loved New York for a long time. We loved St. Louis, but it was time to come to New York. Got here, and we just had to be going back to St. Louis actually to do a bunch of printing and poster printing and stuff. And when the world shut down, and we found ourselves not even in Louis, but in the woods outside St. Louis in a house there. And you know, I instantly lost my job, and without health insurance, and like all the crazy stuff that happened just kind of right away. And it was very freaky, and of course the political world was insane, and it was some of the best times of our lives, like the being out there in the woods. And we had my drum set was there, so I just started practicing drums like 5 hours every day. And Paige was working on French, and we were working on music, and we had a really wonderful time. It took a while for us to realize, like, oh, we thought that this was an album that was processed, but it turns out the pandemic is the end of an era. Like for everyone, for the entire globe, this is like a chapter marker, you know? So we realized, like, well, what we have already made is the album. And then we had to turn and look at that, because we thought of it as like, these are some of the songs among the rest of the songs that we're working on. But eventually we were like, oh, actually, we're going to be selecting from what we've already done.
Yeah, I think at that time we were, when we first moved to New York, that's the thing too. We were in our space in St. Louis for 10 years, and we neglected to remember that any move is a major pain in the ass. And I forgot about that it's like, and especially the longer you're in a space and the bigger the space and the more like kind of artist hoarding tendency, I mean a productive hoarding tendencies, but like, you know, when you're like, we might need these mannequins, and like 3 years later you will, like, you do use them, or you're like, good thing I saved all those bird, you know, those like plastic birds, so that I use them in this Halloween costume this year, or whatever, or a music video or something. And so I neglected to kind of appreciate how a cross country move, and just any move, is for an art studio, for your living space and your art studio, is gonna take longer than you think. And so we kind of finally got to New York. We were finally feeling settled in. We'd had our practice space figured out by then, and we're like, all right, like, I think we're gonna start playing shows like spring 2020. Here we come. And then it was like, oh man, no. But I think because we had just been through the Bhopal, and at that time, like, you know, I was in my early 30s, and I was like, you know what? This is fine. Like, this is a great time to just chill. Like, and now I'm feeling, you know, as years are going by, I'm like, oh, my 30s are flying by. Like, I've got shit to do still. And I feel the anxiety, like not anxiety, but the anxiousness to like get out and make things and get this record out and get on stage again. But at that time, it was like, okay, like we're just gonna chill and we're gonna work on music still. I think these songs, yeah, like we were originally thinking of it as like, we're just gonna record a bunch of songs, we're gonna write a bunch of songs, and then we'll see which ones out of like 20 songs we want to put on the record. And it ended up being not as many were recorded, but it just felt like, okay, this is this body of work. This is what's here. And the world is different now. So, and we're different. Everybody's different. And you want to, you know, you have a different approach to your own art. So, yeah.
So do you think that having gone through all of that, that moving forward, it's changed how you sort of go about doing your business, but that's not really adequate, but it sort of changed how you do your craft, all the adaptation and working on the fly sort of?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot that changed. I mean, you know, our attitudes towards everything have changed in the pandemic, like kind of centering your experience in what you're actually feeling instead of goals that you had, you know, or goals that you can have. Like, I think a lot of people felt the shift from kind of looking forward to being present in the present. And that certainly happened to us. And now, I mean, Sleepy Kitty has been, I mean, it certainly started as kind of lunging forward. Like we started going on tour as soon as we could. We were putting out all kinds of different kinds of music. We were just kind of practicing all the time and just really busy trying to come up with spectacles and stuff like that. And it was really fun. But also, I think we've come to recognize, like, really, it's crucial to enjoy oneself, you know, and actually that's not kind of incidental to the project. It is central to the project. And that's kind of changed. Well, I mean, it's just the music that we've got coming up post Blessing Curse, but it's changed everything about how we live, honestly. We're taking more pleasure in using music to do different kinds of things that we want to do with it, both musical and kind of like having it make sure that it gets us to Europe because we want to do that, and making sure that we're playing with other people that we want to play with, because it's, you know, you gotta get to it if you're going to do it, and not in that sense of like straining for things, but in that sense of like, let's satisfy this need, you know.
Yeah,
let's prioritize that.
Yeah I think that, like, it's less like kind of like, oh, what is the strategy you should be doing, and more like, what do we want to do? Like, we want to get this record out, and like, you know, we want to, what cities do we want to play, and like, how do we do it? And, you know, it's like we've been doing more things DIY than during the projection room years, because of like a lot of reasons, and a lot of things in the industry have changed. But and like, would I love a booking agent in the United States and Europe? Yes, I would. So but that said, it's like, you know, you just gotta, I think pandemic, like, in a positive way, for me, it made me feel like a lot of things don't matter, and like, so have to like make meaning for yourself. And I think this record, it was kind of like, I was less worried this time of like, oh, are we gonna get it? Like, what's it gonna like do? And more like, I'm really excited about this record, and just
making a record. Yeah.
I was just excited when I heard you guys were playing London and Paris. because I know you guys have been trying to get sort of a broader base, and I was kind of curious about how that is influencing things going forward, from a standpoint not just of getting, Sleepy Kitty out into the world, but just that's more of the world you get to absorb and put back into the art. Just how cool is that to go global? And it just seemed like you were like kids in a candy store when Evan was telling me, oh, we're in London or we're in Paris. He seemed like a 5-year-old kid who was just like happy as hell.
I'll tell you, if anything, I was playing it down because that's all absolutely right. We really decided to dive into playing in Europe. We have some in London. We put together a London show, and we've been working with our friend on some music with him. And then we spent some in Paris, and we really loved Paris, and immediately turned around and went back to Paris as soon as we could. And then as soon as we got back, we went into New York. We were like, man, I love New York and I love Paris. So we've been kind of like, that's been a new passion. And once you're in anywhere in Europe, that just opens up wide what you can do. We've toured the US a lot. I mean, and I've toured the US even more with previous bands. Like it's not that I want to go back to Winooski, Vermont or something, but I have been there, and and we've been a lot of places and we really enjoy it. But this band, utilizing the band to put it in places we want to be, and utilizing our passion to put our band where we want it to be is really exciting, and it's going really well. We had awesome shows in Paris and London, and we've got a Paris show coming up, and that part's just really exciting. Like we do feel like kids in a candy store, honestly. I mean, it's just wide open. You start thinking like, well, we met a guy in Brussels, like, well, let's play a show there. And like, we met some people in the south of France, and like, people keep telling us to play in Berlin. And we're like, yes. And it's not like we don't feel that way in the US. It's just like, that is kind of, it's just a whole new, it's just opening a door into the rest of the world, and really feeling like, wow, all you got to do is get there, and then it's not that different. I mean, it helps if we spoke 7 languages, but happily, it's amazing how many people speak English there, and we're getting better at she's getting great at her French. I'm getting better.
So I'm just curious, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you've played in the past on tour, have you not used a bass player, but now you are using a bass player sometimes or always now?
That is correct. So Sleepy Kitty has done, the core has always been Evan and me. And we've gone out on the road as a 2-piece most often. We did go out with another guitar player in 2016. And he was on, I think, most of the songs, but some of them we did as a 2-piece. And then our collaborator, a very frequent collaborator on this album, Ben Schur, is he was based in DC at the time, and he played on the record, and at the same time too, we played a few out of town shows with him while we were recording. And lately we've been playing with someone named Sarah Moskowitz in New York City. And we kind of did it the way that we've always done before, where we have a collab and we're like, you want to play on a couple songs and, maybe a couple more. And really with Sarah live, it's been like, we had her on a couple, and then we had her on a couple more. And then eventually she was playing a whole set with us. And I think because this record, this is the first Sleepy Kitty album with bass on it.
Yeah.
And Evan really particularly feels that you can't really put bass on something and then not have it on stage. And I think when we do a set that's kind of a split set with like a 2-piece first, we'll do the 2-piece songs at the beginning and then add the bass in, because once it's there, you can't really take it out And I agree with that as well. But
I agree with that too. I think it kind of would sound like it just would sound, there's part of it that would just sound empty in a way.
Yeah.
Well, and it's weird because it's not necessarily the frequencies. Like, Paige has a beautiful big old Fender amp that the sound guys don't have any problem getting the full range of frequencies out of. But it's like it's like 2 dancers versus 3 dancers together, or there's just, once that third person is entered, one of the bass is really another character. You can't have it. It's it's a kind of a magic trick to do 2-piece, because there just aren't enough pieces, but somehow you pull it off, and you're like, wow, that's a whole song. It feels really complete. But then once you put in the bass, you're like, oh, there's just this color that if you take it out, everything's going to look or sound washed out, and with Sarah, it's been so much fun that kind of immediately we're like, we would rather just play a bunch of these songs together. And I will say, as a drummer, I mean, it's no surprise to anyone for the drummer to say, like, it's really fun to play with bass. But I went a decade without it, and I learned how to play drums in a really different way. When you don't have bass, your kick drum is the bassist. Your kick drum can be a lot more active than it would normally be in a band with more people, because there's nobody down there, and you gotta, just doing a drum pattern that's just thinking about drums and then letting the guitar just think about guitar, you are leaving an empty space. So I kind of had to more or less pretend that I was writing a bass part that just had, a noteless
That's really
note.
interesting. Yeah.
But it's a pattern, of its own. Now that we have a bass player, I can kind of pull my right foot back a little bit and just kind of let things happen a little bit differently. But it's been really cool. We made this album with the idea of, like, this doesn't have to be reducible to 2 people, and that gave us a lot of freedom. A song like Alceste in Silver Lake, we had a whole new voices that are in there that had never been there before, and all of that stuff kind of came out of us just letting ourselves do whatever the hell we wanted to do. And we really got some surprising results, I would say.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that song too is that so many of your songs have sounded sort of New York-ish, and that sounds very West Coast.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So,
Well, it's about
that's what
Silver Lake.
But it also has like a wall of sound thing going on.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And what's interesting too about the record is, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, but it sounds really restrained, even though I'm not sure it's intentional. But it's like, I can tell that they could turn the decibel up to 11, and they could just make everything dirtier or grimier or add more textures, but they're not. And I think what's interesting is sometimes when you make a record, knowing when not to do all the cool gizmos and stuff is harder than making the actual record, because it seems like Blessing Curse is an album that could go in different directions if you weren't steering the rudder. So it seems very precise. And even though it was born in chaos, right? It seems like it's very precise and like reserved, sort of in that like sort of English reserved way. Like sort of like, we sort of know when to put the pedal on the gas. And it's interesting to hear you guys put the pedal on the gas, because it's a whole new thing.
I love that you have made those observations, because I think I hadn't ever really kind of thought of it in this term, but definitely for me on certain songs, and a lot of them were recorded a long time ago, so I can't remember exactly when, but one of my challenges in the studio is like, sometimes I get ideas for a track to put on, and it's like, oh, that would be fun to play, and that would be like in harmony, but it's like, it wouldn't make it sound like something I want to listen to. And a lot of times I'll have a part idea in my head, and I'm like, I would hate to listen to that. Like that would sound bad. Like, or it would sound like too, like we kind of like joke about like I around the house and stuff, I like to do like kind of like over theatrical vocal versions of like just like to like ruin a song. And like I love theater too.
Like broad versions of Guided by Voices songs.
Yeah. which is actually where Bastard Orphan came from. I was like, the songs from Hamilton sound like they could
that's
be
such a
guided by
cool.
voices songs.
That is so. That's such a great
and vice
EP.
versa. Thank you. Yeah, but it's like, you know, some like Robert Pollard writes excellent melodies, and I think they are Broadway worthy. And if somebody did that, I wouldn't like that show. I love like Andrew Lloyd Webber. I love the kind of classic Broadway stuff. I love, you know, like Kander and Ebb stuff. But like I don't like jukebox musicals typically. And so I feel like, but anyways, yeah. So a lot of times I'll have an idea for a harmony and I'm like, oh man, like I know I would do for the third or fourth harmony, but I'm like, that would make it less cool. And like I wouldn't, and I think this time I was really trying to make a record against my own kind of like instincts / capabilities that I really wanted to listen to. And I think because I think even I mean I like what we did on Projection Room, but I think there are things where I love singing harmony, and I think it's the funnest thing to do is sing harmony with another voice. But I think that sometimes you don't need tons of harmonies everywhere, and that's the thing that I think this record, it has a ton of harmony on it, don't get me wrong, but I think you're right. It's like we don't put everything out. It's like was it like Coco Chanel said, always take something, like when you're getting ready, like before you go out, just take off a piece, like take off a necklace or take off the earrings, like remove one layer. And I think it was kind of like that. It's like I wouldn't call it a minimal record, but I do think that we didn't go maximal.
And I'm curious to see how this is going to sound live, because I imagine that these songs are just going to like all hell's going to break loose live. They're just going to like sweat and vibrate and move in different ways than they do on the album. And I'm excited about that part of it.
There's definitely a lot going on. I mean, it's so much fun. Like Sarah plays bass and she also sings some of the harmonies. So we get to do that. And then also Paige will still use kind of her live looped harmonies at times, so that we've got a bunch of vocals. And I think one of the really cool things about having the presence of the bass is we don't have a live loop guitar for Paige to be able to play a lead over it. So some of our song structures are able to get a little bit more sturdy because we don't have to run an entire, verse to catch that verse, so that we can run a guitar line to the top of it.
Yep.
And it's also, I mean, one of the things that's definitely true in these, and I am excited for you to see them live, is that has really opened us up. Like, obviously, when you can have the drums and bass playing and no guitar at all, that really opens Paige up to be able to drop in guitar in interesting new ways. She's a fantastic guitarist, and I think it's been present in our previous albums, but in this one, there's definitely some of my favorite guitar work, and really some areas where she can kind of get psychedelic with the guitar, and live, I've found, if anything, we have more room for that than even on the recording, and that's been really exciting. It's like being able to both be wilder when we're wild, but also be really focused when we want to be too. I've been appreciating songs with kind of slower tempos, not necessarily slow, but that start quiet and restrained. Like Out of My Mind really comes in at this low lope that we really couldn't quite do before, because that one is really, that's the bass and drums doing that stuff, and then there's kind of like shimmery guitar that gives little punctuations, but it's fundamentally bass and guitar, and we didn't have that before. So that's been really great, and it feels like more mature, I think is the word for it. But then it also sets up for those guitar leads. Amazing.
Yeah. When you're talking about getting a little more psychedelic on the guitar, one of my favorite tracks on the album is Pour Gilles. And I feel like it's so atmospheric, and I really love it. And I kind of get hints of like the Sundays or Sixpence None the Richer or Mazzy Star.
Oh,
I'm just
cool,
kind of
yeah.
curious to know when you were, and my other favorite song on the album is I Got a Feeling, which is so
Oh, cool.
different. I love the way that you change styles on every song. I Got a Feeling has got those spoken word verses. And the thing that I love about that is that they don't sound gimmicky. It doesn't, it sounds very conversational. It sounds so natural. And I would love to play those to somebody not knowing and see if they could identify them as coming from the same band or not.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think that those, I mean, I think Paige, like that one is that one I remember kind of trying to write a song that could be not reduced to people, but a song that I could just play with an acoustic guitar too. Because like every now and then I like to kind of force myself to make a song, because as you're at a party, you're at a friend's house and there's a bunch of musicians and they're passing around the guitar. And I'm like, why didn't I learn a Bob Dylan song in the last however many years of my life? And I'm always like, shoot, I never have something to play. And it's like, oh well, here's a Sleepy Kitty song and here's another Sleepy Kitty song. But yeah, so I like to have some songs that I can play, like if we're in a situation like open mic or when there's a group of people casually kind of sharing their music. And Portia like was definitely one that like I feel the acoustic version there is an acoustic kind of core to it.
Yeah.
But definitely the kind of like I guess like shoegazy kind of, like fuzzy, keep it fuzzy. And I'd say I was listening to a lot of like kind of getting into a lot of French kind of indie rock pop at that time, and like with some of the vocal approach and what Evan calls sunglasses rock. And but yeah, so and then I Got a Feeling was just one of those things that kind of came out of, it came out of a kind of professional frustration moment, but the song came out of thin air in a way. And Evan was like, we were going to go to a show together. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to stay and work on this new song idea that's kind of going around in my head. And it just had it's literally the Casio keyboard that I've had since I was in second grade. And I just had the little drum machine, like just to have a metronome basically. And yeah, it came together very quickly, and I was just recording myself, and some of it some of the sounds I was like, I don't even know how what I did, what I was on to get the sounds, some of the guitar sounds. It was like a linear experience for me, like just like make the song, just go through the song. And we tried to record it again a couple times, but nothing had the energy of that kind of first like raw demo. And luckily it wasn't too demo-y that it couldn't be on the album. But
yeah,
Evan
sometimes
was really
you can't recapture that. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
I like when that happens.
Yeah, like first vocal take, or I don't remember how many I did when I was working on it that night. Like it was on GarageBand, but like we did record it. It was like nothing has that that thing of that first recording,
that true acid.
Yeah, that true acid, and that true kind of like the emotion was like really there. And it feels very, I can't remember if I must have already heard Modern Lovers' Hippie Johnny. I must have already heard that song by then, but it would have been around that time that I finally like heard that Modern Lovers album. And that was a really exciting album for me, because it was like one that I'd seen a million times, never gotten to, and it was like so exciting to have a new classic in my life. But I think there's some definitely probably some Modern Lovers influence in that one with the right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
That's also the only thing that we've done with electronic drums, where it was just a drum machine thing. And I think that really separates it from the other stuff. And Paige initially she was like, well, of course we'll do this with drums, and we did try it a couple times, but it was like, this doesn't need that. Like it's not about that in action. It's about listen, like this, like kind of like I've had it.
The attitude.
I got to get some things off my chest,
Yeah.
and then it did feel like subsequently trying to recreate that just like kind of burst of feeling was unnecessary. Since then, we figured out a live version that's like super exciting. It's probably our favorite thing to play live, and it's got a whole lot more things going on. And we do want to record a new version of that with the 3-piece, because it really has a whole different life to it. But that recording turned out really that recording, I think, turned out to be the linchpin in the album. Like, which was kind of existing for a little bit, actually putting it, like having it be one of the songs. Like there were a couple songs that did end up coming off, and there were songs that each had that were like kind of sticking points. And I think once that one really fit into the album, we realized like that's what it needed. Like this is now a complete album, and it's got the breadth that we are kind of reaching for, where we do have the songs sounding. We don't want to have the same trick times on an album. You know, we want to be giving a new facet every single time, if not several new facets.
It's also one of the most intense ones to sing. It's like rangy. So it's very, very fun, but also like I just have to be warmed up to do these songs in a way that I didn't before. But maybe that's just youth, and you're like, I'm just gonna throw myself into it, and like I need to warm up, and I need to have my tea, and
Right.
Yeah.
You're talking about doing multiple takes of that song and not being able to recreate that initial feeling, and that's kind of my impression of the album. I feel like the whole album is like, when you listen to it, you're hearing it as it happens. It's got that immediacy to it. It's like you're hearing something, like you're playing it for me right now at this moment. And I want to know, how quickly was the album put together? Did you do a lot of retakes on a lot of things, or was there a lot of different demo versions of things before you settled on a final version? Because it sounds so spontaneous and so energetic.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks.
We are studio hounds. Like, we really like to spend night. That's actually our favorite place in the world, is to get in and get down what we know, and then jump into all the stuff we don't know about the song, you know. Find the happy accidents and the you know, layer the guitar once more, and then take out the one that you thought was going to be the main one, and use that sound instead, and you know, all those kinds of things. And it's interesting because I Got a Feeling was not a studio song. That was at home, basically. But I do think the thing that, it's funny, I think of these as very highly constructed arrangements of sounds. But absolutely, I think the goal, well, I think about this all the time with movies. You watch a movie and you're kind of amazed and surprised if it's a good movie at what's happening, and you didn't see things coming, and you know, you get to the end of the movie and you're like, wow, what an experience that was. And then I think, man, they spent years making it. Like, they knew exactly the narrative, like, to be able to build something so consciously so that the viewer can have a surprising experience and an enriching experience, a kind of a linear watch or in an album listen. It's really that's one of the exciting things about making art, you know, and making music stuff is being able to work really hard on something so that somebody can hear the, you know, you might need 10 takes of the guitar to get the one that has just the right ear right before the chorus or whatever, you know. But you keep that thing because it got that, it is the sound of the fresh thing happening for the first time, and or you know, that's why you keep it in there. And I think there's a bunch of places in this album where that happens, and we're kind of, I think of us as kind of a crescendo based band. Like our shapes tend toward they tend to get to a peak, and their dynamic is shaped kind of like, I think, like a less like cycles and more like a short story or a novel or something, you know, where it kind of heads towards a crisis. And that, I think, hopefully gives that sense of like, I don't know where we're going with this, when you hear a song, and therefore a sense of like excitement.
I think the thing when you feel like very immediate and very like kind of like you're hearing it in that moment. This one, we did go into the studio. I think one of the ways it took a long time was we kind of, when a song felt ready, we would try to get in the studio as soon as possible. And I think Bigger Picture was kind of the oldest song on the record and the one that we'd been playing live the longest. But all the other ones, most of them we hadn't even played in front of people until last summer when we finally started playing out again. And I think like a lot of them, like Alceste and Silver Lake was one where I had an idea and I kind of had a structure that I was like, okay, Evan, like I can't play all the parts at once, but like this is going to do this and these guys say, and then we're going to do all these things and it's all going to make sense together. And so we did a lot of demoing and we had a collaborator, Julian Swartz, work on that with us too on the guitar. And then basically, as soon as things were feeling good, we would kind of try to get in the studio to kind of keep that energy and not overthink it. Same with Bless and Curse and Wishful Thinking. Those were recorded at the same time. Those were the kind of the first ones we recorded. And I recently found a demo, the very first demo of Wishful Thinking. And I don't know why, but I was playing it just on one acoustic string, and but you can hear that like the idea of the song there, and then we demoed those pretty extensively, but then it was like, okay, here's the time. It's like book studio time, like get in there, get it before you overthink it and change everything that's good about it.
Yeah. Can I sort of do a little quick quiz about your influences? 'Cause I keep reading articles and people will say, oh, I think they sound like this or this. And I have been, when I'm listening to your music, I feel like I hear a whole different sort of set of things. So I'm just going to name just like 7 or 8 bands, and you can just say yes or no if you had any sort of like thought about them in your music at all. Okay.
I love
This is
this.
so exciting.
Okay. The B-52s.
I would say generally they're there. They're in the head.
Dale Bozio / Missing Persons. And not only vocals, but just musically too, like music.
That's so interesting.
I don't know that band.
Mm-hmm.
What?
What?
Wait. Okay. That's your homework assignment.
Your band.
I know.
Your band.
I'm excited to write these down. I'm like,
okay, Missing
No
Persons.
more airplay for you.
Yeah, I know. It's like this is going to be really embarraing because I always feel like
no. I'm just probably like
don't know things
like
I'm
15
supposed
years
to know.
older than you. So okay. The Waitresses, Patty from the Waitresses.
I think that's one that's like B-52s, less so, but it's like it's in the psyche. You know?
Okay.
I'm learning about our songs from the things that you're saying, because I'm like connecting vocal tones that you're saying to like both Waitresses and Missing Persons. I'm like, oh, I never put those things together, but I now can see a line between them for sure.
I would say B-52s, like before I even like knew other songs besides Love Shack, like that song, like Love Shack itself is just like the vocals on that are so exciting. And like,
I know.
And the like the male and female vocals, and just like, it's just one of those things that's a really exciting recording. And anytime I hear it, I love it. And I love her voice on it. And I definitely think, without kind of being consciously influenced by it, I think it's what Evan and I have a phrase, what we call like, the stuff that it's like with you, no matter whether you want it or not, like your favorite Disney movie from when you're a kid. It's like, we call that reptile brain. Like, it's just like, it's just in there and it's just part of your being. So
yes.
So B-52s is reptile brain for me.
I got 3 more. Veruca Salt.
Oh man. Yes. Veruca Salt, we even
I would say like they're in there.
There's a new song that's got Veruca Salt in it.
Nice.
Ebenezer.
Oh, that one.
There's definitely for me, definitely.
Yeah, I would say for me, less definitely when I first started playing. but less on this record. But yes, but as a musician, 100%.
Okay. Split Ends.
I don't know Split Ends.
You know Crowded House. Yeah. Neil Finn.
Yeah.
Okay. But Split Ends is his first band with his brother.
Cool.
Check them out. They're super quirky and awesome. And from New Zealand, like you, just amazing. But they're very quirky and odd, and just, I think you'll dig them. And the last one is White Stripes.
Oh yeah.
Not only just
White
because of the 2-piece thing, but just White Stripes.
Yeah. And I think that was a band that like I resisted when they came out, and like when I guess I was like in high school when they really got big, and I really kind of resisted, but then a friend was like, no, listen to these records, and I'm like, they're amazing. And we always talk about this. Meg White was like, just like knew exactly what to do, and Jack White obviously knows exactly what to do. Like that, it's yes.
We definitely you hear White Stripes more in our earlier stuff. It's crashier, bashier at times, and also some of the guitar tones that Paige had then were even more, not straight up modeled from it or something, but like there was a line to be drawn.
What's funny though, of that era, bands that came out around that kind of like, were in the mainstream at that, or, kind of rose up at that time, that I was more influenced, like consciously influenced by at that time, were the Strokes, which I hear it at Guitar Center. All the people that weren't even born, that weren't even born when that album came out, they like the Strokes. But the Strokes and the Black Keys were a really big piece for me when I first started playing guitar.
That's cool.
I would
haven't
also
followed them lately, but yeah.
I would also add Franz Gall, who's
absolutely yes.
Especially this record, you sort of have this singer kind of thing going on that I thought was interesting.
She is my favorite singer. Like I think like she is like I just think her voice. I think her voice and her skill. I think she is the one that I tell people now, like if I have to say a favorite vocalist, like she's the one. It's like Steve Malkmus and Franz Gall, but yeah, for different reasons, obviously. But yes, Franz Gall, amazing voice, amazing, just application of the voice.
And you kind of talked about Veruca Salt and some of these other bands too, and I first heard Evan playing in Harvey Danger, right? Which may or may not be a good thing depending on how you the context of it. But being a musician in that time has sort of, I think anybody who still makes music after that has sort of absorbed that whole like mass consumerism of this is commercial alternative music, and it's in their DNA, sort of in how music is like supposed to be made and released and produced and stuff. And I think that now all these musicians that were in that era, as they move farther away from that, are really doing lots of interesting new things because they've had that sort of wear and tear from that sort of golden age of alternative American rock behind them. So I'm just wondering if like that whole experience has affected you as a musician.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, it's interesting. Veruca Salt, that was a band that, so Harvey Danger, we all lived in Seattle and we all lived together in a couple different houses for years. And we had certain albums that were really just, meetings of the mind. And definitely Veruca Salt, American Thighs was one of them. Also, one that I've been falling way back into lately, R.E.M's Monster. It's just an incredible
it's
record.
So good.
Yeah, we've been really feeling those tones and those ideas lately. But and I can realize that Veruca Salt's Spider-Man 69, like that was a huge influence on our bassist in particular and Harvey Danger. And I remember going to a Veruca Salt show. So I was, early 20s or something when that all was happening, when Harvey Danger was happening. I mean, I started and I was our whole band's first band. And we were all like, I don't know, 18, 19, started doing it. but you know, it lasted for a while. And I went to see Veruca Salt. And also, this was 1991 through 90, you know, through 2000 in Seattle. So everything was crazy in the rock world, and you're seeing all this super cool stuff, and you're seeing you're seeing commodification, and you're seeing the kind of like something go from local to international, from truly unmarketed to truly commodified. Sometimes it's the very same thing that gets put through a different pipeline, and it comes at you, you know, instead of being at your local rock spot, it's coming at you from the biggest radio station in town, or whatever, or MTV. And I remember Veruca Salt was the show that I was so excited to be there, and I got a boot to the back of the head from a bunch of crowd surfers. And it was that moment, that show to me was the moment when I was like, okay, I can't put off anymore my sense of like, this scene has this thing has transferred from being like a bunch of us who are kind of moshing in a circle, and I can talk all day about how crucial the kind of moshing circle was to the dynamics of the rock that became alternative rock. But Veruca Salt, the kind of like, I just watched the kind of like college row dynamics just take over the room, and that was the moment. That was the moment when I lost my sense of like, this is fun from underground, and I was like, oh, what I love has passed into the, you know, overground or whatever. But I don't blame Veruca Salt, and that's one of the things I learned from Harvey Danger is like, we crossed over to the mainstream or whatever. We crossed over to massive consumption, and we didn't. I mean, I can say for sure we didn't mean to do that. We didn't know that was going to happen. That had no bearing in our writing. And when it did happen, it was completely shocking and surreal. And I wouldn't, you know, it helped me not presume motives on anybody else's part, you know, which a huge part of the 90s was presuming a huge amount of motives and projecting, you know, negatively on people. So
I sort of mentioned this in another episode of our podcast, but like it was when REM finally broke big and with their hit Stand, and everyone was sort of like backlashing on them, and I was thinking to myself like, fuck that, like that's bullshit. Like they've paid their dues, like they sort of deserve to be huge, and they have great songs, and that's a great record and whatever. So like, I don't ever hold it against a band when they, you know, but sometimes the scene gets out of control and like stupid, and that's the part that sucks, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and I've since found I don't really like going to shows more than like 500 people there or whatever. Right. Like, and so sometimes bands just move out of that realm, you know. Yeah. And then I don't really see them anymore because I don't like. It's not that I never go to a show with 10,000 people there or whatever, but I just don't. That's a completely different experience, you know. That is just an utterly different experience than the rock and roll experience that I want. And it's not just the sweatiness or whatever. It's just like I don't. There's just something, I still think after all this time, there's something so sacred about the rock and roll show, like seeing your friends, not knowing if you're, you know, seeing the band in the crowd, the merch table, the sense that you know that we're in Kansas City last night and they're going to be in Nashville tomorrow night. And, you know, you can talk with them about that if you want, or you can talk about comics with them if you want. You know, you can really have a human to human experience that was part of what made me fall so hard for I say rock and roll, but really I just mean like the culture of people making music in front of each other, for each other. The fact that, you know, when you go see a show and there's 500 people there, probably 300 of them are also musicians, you know, and that's so much cooler when you're in a crowd of 10,000. I don't think 8,000 of those are musicians. I think you've moved into a thing where it's like, there's still probably 500 people who are musicians. There's just a whole lot more non-musicians. I don't blame that either. It's just like, that's just a really different experience. And
Right. It's just
I
like
really
a preference. Like,
respond
what
to.
do you like?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, some of those favorite bands, I just kind of stopped. I stopped going to see when they get too big for me to enjoy in the same way.
So I kind of wanted to circle back to the art, if I can.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I'm curious, when do you know how to compartmentalize it? Because one of the great things is, like, I think you guys were working on Hamilton around the same time you did the short for the film festival and some other stuff, right? And one of the things I've always sort of said is, how can they, as someone who takes on 10,000 things and realizes I'm crazy, how can you do that, like, creatively? Like, how do you compartmentalize it? And also sort of the process of, like, I know at some point you were silk screening something and something sparked in there that became a song later, or a creative idea for something to germinate with the band. So how does that interplay work with all those different mediums? How does it come together? How does it come apart? But also, how does it fit into sort of I hate to use this word, but it's the only thing I can think of, sort of the zeitgeist of Sleepy Kitty, because Sleepy Kitty is kind of a zeitgeist more than a band. How does that all work and flow around?
Man, how does that all work and flow around? I mean,
Or is it all
yes,
chaos and you just pull it off?
I think, like, okay, looking at our screen behind us too, I'm like, it's kind of chaos, It's like, as you can tell, there's just like a lot of source material. Like, I'm like, we've got a seagull hanging from the ceiling, and we've got a disco ball and a protest, a sign from the protest of, like, when Roe v. Wade was overturned, and a Rocky Horror Picture Show poster, and like an art table full of stuff. And I'm like, I think everything we do, like, jam everything into everything all the time. And we always talk about this, like, for whatever reason, it really works for Evan and me to spend a lot of time together. And my mom always laughs about us, like, because we'll be away from each other for like an hour and be like, oh my God, I have so many things to tell you. And she's like, how do you have like so many things like, you were just riding in a different car together, like, how do you have so many things to tell each other? But I think, like, we get, like, really excited about ideas, and we get really, like, there's just, like, so many unrealized projects. Like, that's the thing, I think, is, like, so I think we have while I was in the book, just of, like, I just, like, was, like, forcing myself to write down, like, just as many ideas as I could. And, like, sometimes some of them are, like, so silly, or it's like an idea for a show, or like an idea for a pie or something. There's just, like, everything. It's just, like, crazy. And I think, like, that's the thing. Like, we really like to just, like, throw, like, lots of ideas. And for me, I like end up starting a ton of notebooks, and I'm like, this one's going to be the one that's all lyrics. And this time, I really mean it. It's going to be all lyrics. And this one's going to be the one that's, like, to-do lists and stuff. And I'm like, and sure enough, every freaking time they meld into each other, and it's like, that's just how it works. And I think, for the artwork, like, I guess, like, bringing it back to that, like, during the pandemic, I really started just, like, collaging in my sketchbook a lot more, and that was one of the blessing parts. And the nice things was just having time to work in sketchbook a lot. And I should say, it wasn't having time; it was choosing time. Like, because I could be, like, antisocial, and I could be like, yeah, I'm just gonna stay home and sketchbook, but, like, we're social creatures, and there's fun things to do out in New York City and in Paris, and we go do them. But I think, so, like, the Blessing Curse artwork was a piece that I just really liked from this time where I was, like, just making a lot of pages in my sketchbook. And I don't know how. I think what happens with our albums, what's happened with Flux too, the Hamilton covers was, like, a goal of, like, we're going to do these songs and we're going to make this EP. But most of the albums, I would say, what ends up happening is at some point, I feel like I'm like a hard drive that fills up, and I'm like, I got to get rid of this. And I got to get this out. And I tell Evan, I think it's done. And he's like, really? Like, are you sure we don't want to record more songs sometimes? And sometimes, but then I think what happens with us is once we start making artwork, then it starts to, like, help finish the piece. And I think I can't remember how this particular piece ended up on a cover. I think it was just, like, one night where I was like, I'm just gonna, like, start throwing stuff at it. But maybe you ended up putting the text on. I don't know.
I turned it sideways.
You turned it sideways. Crucial. Yeah. But yeah, so I think like it was just a piece we liked, and it felt like it was of the time of this record, and it was like, let's put that on there. Like, what happens to these songs if we just look at this piece of art in a square and start saying, what if this is the new record? And I think doing that, it's like if you name something, it does start going together more. And I think I mean, it happens with like stray cats too. Like if you name a stray cat, like you're gonna have a cat in a couple weeks, So I think
it's cat's gonna be yours in a second.
Yeah, exactly. So if you name it, I think it will. If you name it, it will resolve.
I feel
That's
like
cool.
well, one thing I've always made design stuff. I learned about music, started learning about design, and started writing about music, and started writing music all at the same time. And those have always been intertwined. Rob, I think the question about where one begins or ends and kind of how that all relates, I always think about in screen printing, we really put a premium on bright colors and like colors blending with each other, and like the munge and grunge of and schmutz, we call it, of the kind of halftones and stuff like that translates directly to like distortion. Like we put distortion in the art that is representative of the distortion in the amps, and there's degrees of structure to the design that really are analogous with the structure that comes with the of a song, and I think I think drumming and graphic design are really practically the same act in two different media. So there's a kind of a sense that we are doing the same thing in these different ways, and I think the color palette of the cover of Blessing Curse to me became the amp palette of Blessing Curse. The songs were done, but I didn't know they were those colors until I saw that picture, and now I do think that they're those colors and those textures. There are halftone screens on it on the back, and there's brush strokes, and there's that green slash of whatever. Sometimes I think of it as a fence or whatever it is, and that bright red, and there's like bright pinks against the red, and to me those go right into what it sounds like. And I don't. Maybe it's just a lot of practice at crossing media, but it took the cover to finish the sound of the songs. It took looking at it to know the sound that we're done. So it's a blessing to us that we get to have, we don't just hand it to somebody and say like, well, that's what it looks like, In Harvey Danger, we had to do that on an album because there were two designers in the band, but we kind of couldn't solve it, and we had to hand it off to somebody else. But we've really found with Sleepy Kitty over and over again, the album artwork it is that transmutation from one medium to another that allows us to finish the album.
Nice.
That's fascinating. It really is.
Yeah.
I love to hear it. That's such a cool. That's great.
Thanks. Yeah, it is. It's really interesting how you put that too. But yeah, it's like it's all at the same time, I guess.
Yeah, and spending 4 hours together.
Yeah,
highly recommend it.
Ask yourself, is the Flopcast the right podcast for you?
Do you have trouble picking a favorite Weird Al song, Karate Kid sequel, or Justice League Detroit member? Are you obsessed with Cousin Oliver from the Brady Bunch, Vicky the captain's daughter from The Love Boat?
Or Vicky the robot from Small Wonder?
Do you think Cyndi Lauper's We Are the World solo is the most important event in history?
You have half an hour a week for something completely stupid.
Then the Flopcast might be the right podcast for you.
We're on the ESO network
and at flopcast.net.
You guys, thank you so much for joining us and having this chat with us. We have been looking forward to meeting you and getting to know you for weeks now. Ever since we, got this lined up, we were like, oh my gosh, we started listening to the music and we just love it. And we've been so looking forward to meeting you. Thank you for being just amazing people.
I know I could talk to you forever. I feel like so many.
And I'm like, this is fun. Yeah.
Same time next week, right?
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, this has been a real pleasure, and thanks for the close listens to the music, because I can hear it in the questions, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for. Yeah, we really appreciate just all the work you guys have put into this too.
Yeah.
So where can folks find more about Sleepy Kitty? Where's the best place to go to get more info or to see tour dates?
We do have sleepkittymusic.com, and that is probably that will link to all your socials of choice, or that's probably the best way to.
And we will have a new music video coming out shortly.
Yeah.
We don't have a date set, but for the song Blessing Curse, that we're really excited about. We made it in St. Louis in the Art Castle with our friend Brian McClellan and a whole extensive cast of some of our very favorite actors in St. Louis. So a wild project, and it made a really cool video. And so we're looking forward to people getting to see that. And you can find out about that at sleepykittymusic.com, I'm sure.
Yeah, and Sleepy Kitty Music on the socials.
Yeah.
That's probably the best too. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you both so much. We have had a great time talking to you. And
likewise.
I've got like pages and more questions.
I know, me
so
too.
Yeah, we
I
all
think
do.
we might have to have you back on if you would be willing to come on another time.
Oh my God, we'd love that.
We'd love it.
Yeah,
this is
so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do this as much as you want.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, you guys have a terrific rest of your night, and we will be talking to you soon. And we will encourage people to go and listen to the new album and to go see you when you're in their area.
Right on. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye,
Good night.
guys. Thank you so
Bye, kids.
much.
So we will be back next week with a show. I'll just say that. And until then, Stephanie, why don't you kick us off with where people can find you?
You can find me on Facebook at Stephanie Seymour Music. You can find me on Instagram at there_r_birds. And I have a website, therearebirds.com. And you can find me on Bandcamp under my name, Stephanie Seymour. And of course, on all these streaming platforms like Spotify and stuff like that.
All right, Anthony.
You can also find me on the Watchers in the Fourth Dimension podcast, watching our way through all of Doctor Who from 1963 until now. We are on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and all of those other places wherever you like to get your podcasts. And you can also follow us on social media at Watchers4D on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or X, or whatever the fuck it's called this week.
Right.
And you can also find me personally on Instagram at Englishman in ATL.
Rob, how about you?
So you can find me on Facebook or the Twitter X planetary mess that is. Also on Post under my name. And you can find me on the radio on Wednesday nights on KDHX 88.1 FM in St. Louis. Streaming at kdhx.org. So you can listen to that on the archive stream whenever you want. It's there for you to listen to whenever. Also, I host a show on Louder Than More Radio on Monday nights from 6 to 8 Greenwich Mean Time. And then that's 1 to 3 Eastern, 12 to 2 Central. It's called Antics. You can listen to that there. And I'm also on the Weekend Justice podcast for neatcoffee.com.
All right. And I've got a website that catches all of my nonsense in one place, and that is Cosmic Creative. KOZMIC creative.com. You can find my books. You can find my podcasts. And I don't know, maybe I'll put out a coloring book and you can find that there too. I don't know. So we will be back soon. Hope you'll stick around with us. Until then, take care, keep rocking on, and we'll see you soon.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.